There are no accidents in Hollywood, only cover stories. That line has echoed through studio lots and smoky back rooms for decades. But what happens when a chance event is just too strange to ignore? Did fate play favorites, or was something darker at work behind the scenes? Tonight, we're peeling back the curtain on the unexplainable twists that turned movie legends into whispered mysteries. Just be warned, sometimes what looks like luck is really the beginning of a much bigger story: Thelma Todd's mysterious death. There's a particular chill that runs through the annals of Hollywood's golden age, and it's never colder than in the strange case of Thelma Todd. She was the ice cream blonde, the sparkling comedian who held her own alongside the Marx Brothers and Laurel and Hardy. Todd's star was rising fast, her laughter echoing through 1930s Los Angeles. Yet, in December 1935, that laughter was silenced forever, and what remained was a riddle that would haunt the industry for generations. On the night of December 15th, Thelma attended a party thrown by her ex-husband, Pat DiCicco, at his popular cafe just above the Pacific Coast Highway. The evening was tense. Guests whispered about DiCicco's temper, and Todd was seen arguing with him, her face tight with stress. She left the party late, reportedly dropped off at home by her friend. But that's where the certainty ends, and the fog of rumor begins. The following morning, Thelma was found dead in her car, slumped behind the wheel inside the garage of her lover's wife, a location that only deepened the mystery. The engine was off, the doors locked, and the official cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning. The studio quickly tried to wrap it up as a tragic accident. Thelma, perhaps locked out of her house, tried to stay warm in her car and fell asleep as deadly fumes filled the air. But nobody in Hollywood was buying it, not really. Todd's face was bruised, her lip cut, and traces of blood were discovered near the scene. Some whispered she was killed for knowing too much about mob ties in Hollywood. Others suspected her ex-husband, whose violent reputation was well known. Even her business partner, Roland West, who lived above the garage, became a subject of suspicion, given the rumors of their turbulent relationship. What made it all the more haunting was the sheer web of coincidences. Thelma had reportedly received threats not long before her death. She'd been seen in public arguing with men connected to organized crime. And perhaps most chilling of all, she'd told friends she feared for her life. Yet, after a brief investigation and a hastily convened coroner's inquest, the case was officially closed as an accident, leaving the press and public to fill in the gaps. Thelma Todd's untimely demise became one of old Hollywood's most persistent conspiracy magnets, a real-life noir where every detail, every coincidence, only sharpened suspicion. To this day, the ice cream blonde's final hours remain a riddle, her laughter replaced by the echo of unanswered questions in the hills above Hollywood. Natalie Wood's drowning. There are Hollywood stories that fade with time, but Natalie Wood's final night keeps resurfacing, refusing to let go of its secrets. For decades, the tragic drowning of the beloved starlet has spawned more questions than answers, and nearly every coincidence that night fueled theories that her death was anything but an accident. On November 28, 1981, Natalie Wood set out for a weekend cruise to Santa Catalina Island with her husband, Robert Wagner, her Brainstorm co-star Christopher Walken, and the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern. What should have been a relaxing evening on the yacht, splendor turned into a nightmare that would haunt Hollywood for generations. The official story is that after an evening of heavy drinking and arguments, Wood somehow slipped into the cold, dark waters and drowned. Her body was found hours later, floating not far from the yacht, dressed only in a nightgown, socks, and a down jacket. But it's the details, the coincidences, that have always kept this tragedy in the public imagination. First, there were reports of heated arguments between Wagner and Wood, with Walken caught in the middle. Neighbors on the island claimed to have heard a woman screaming for help during the night, and, most notably, Wood was notoriously afraid of water. She had reportedly confessed that fear to friends and family, a phobia stemming from a childhood trauma on a movie set, making the idea of her wandering alone at night, climbing into a dinghy, seem suspicious to many. The autopsy deepened the mystery. Wood's body showed bruises on her arms and legs, as well as a fresh abrasion on her cheek. Some experts argued these could have resulted from the struggle to survive in rough waters, but others insisted they matched injuries one might sustain in a fight or being pushed. Adding to the confusion, Captain Davern changed his story decades later, claiming Wagner and Wood had fought and that Wagner had delayed calling for help. Despite being ruled an accidental drowning, the case was reopened in 2011, and Wagner himself was named a person of interest in 2018. Through it all, theories have flourished. Was it a drunken accident, a lover's quarrel gone wrong, or something even darker? The truth is tangled in the fog of that night, in a web of coincidence and suspicion that refuses to break. Natalie Wood's story endures because Hollywood and the world simply can't believe the most beautiful star in the room could disappear without someone, somewhere, knowing exactly why. George Reeves's sudden death. To millions of Americans in the 1950s, George Reeves was more than an actor. He was Superman himself. The Man of Steel beamed into living rooms every week. But behind the scenes, Reeves was a man at odds with his image, and the abrupt, violent end to his life became one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries, tangled in coincidence and conjecture. On the night of June 16, 1959, Reeves was found dead in his Benedict Canyon home from a gunshot wound to the head. Police quickly labeled it a suicide. The official story: Reeves, plagued by depression over typecasting and career setbacks, took his own life while a small group of friends, including his fiancée Leonore Lemon, were partying downstairs. But almost nothing about the scene felt straightforward. The gun that killed him was found next to his body, but there were no fingerprints on it. Several bullet holes were discovered in the floor, and witnesses recalled hearing multiple shots. Strangely, guests waited a reported 45 minutes before calling the police. The coincidences ran deeper. Reeves had recently rekindled a relationship with Toni Mannix, wife of powerful MGM fixer Eddie Mannix, a man rumored to make problems disappear for the studio's top talent. Whispers swept through Hollywood that Eddie Mannix, jealous or seeking to protect his wife, had arranged a hit disguised as suicide. Some pointed to Lemon's erratic behavior and conflicting accounts of what happened that night. Others recalled that Reeves had been in good spirits, even making wedding plans just days before. There were also inconsistencies in the forensics. The lack of gunpowder residue on Reeves' hands suggested he might not have fired the weapon himself. Neighbors reported hearing a woman scream, followed by gunshots, adding to the speculation that an argument had preceded the fatal shot. Yet, despite these troubling details, the LAPD refused to reopen the case. Decades later, the story has never really gone away. Books, documentaries, and even a Hollywood movie, Hollywoodland, have kept the legend alive, each retelling raising new questions about that night. Did Superman fall by his own hand, or was there a more sinister force at work, one shielded by Hollywood's old code of silence? George Reeves's death stands as a quintessential Hollywood riddle, a tapestry of coincidence, shadowy power, and the tragic reality that the man who played Superman might have been most vulnerable of all. Marilyn Monroe's fatal overdose. There are few tragedies in Hollywood history as haunting as the death of Marilyn Monroe. She was the ultimate American icon, blonde, bewitching, and endlessly scrutinized by a hungry media machine. Her life was a tangle of glamour and heartbreak, her every move chronicled and dissected. So, when Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Brentwood home on August 5, 1962, from a massive overdose of barbiturates, the official verdict of probable suicide seemed, to many, both too simple and too suspicious. Almost immediately, the details and timing of her demise ignited decades of conspiracy theories, all fueled by a cascade of uncanny coincidences. For starters, Marilyn's death came at a moment of intense turmoil. She'd just been fired from the set of Something's Got to Give, was estranged from major studios, and her relationships with high-profile men were front-page news. But it was her rumored affairs with both President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, that would light a fire under the suspicion that her passing was anything but accidental. The official timeline had her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, noticing a light on in Marilyn's room late at night, but the police weren't called until hours later. That delay, combined with reports of a hurried, chaotic scene at the house, bed linen changed, pill bottles scattered, Monroe's phone records erased, only deepened public mistrust. Witnesses claimed to have seen men resembling federal agents at the scene before authorities arrived, and rumors spread that Monroe's diary, allegedly filled with secrets about the Kennedys, disappeared that very night. The press latched on, with headlines blaring about missing evidence and mysterious visitors. Even the pathologist on the case expressed doubts, noting that the levels of drugs in Monroe's blood were so high she could not have physically swallowed them all at once, hinting at possible injection. All these details, amplified by Monroe's own history of emotional fragility and institutional betrayals, made the official story hard for the world to swallow. The fact that so many of the key players involved, politicians, studio heads, and even law enforcement, seemed to have something to lose only added fuel to the fire. To this day, Marilyn Monroe's death stands as the gold standard of Hollywood conspiracy theories, a vortex of tragic coincidence, power, and unanswered questions. It's the classic tale of a star extinguished at her brightest, leaving the world wondering whether the truth about her final night will ever really come to light. Jayne Mansfield's decapitation and occult links. Jayne Mansfield's life was a whirlwind of publicity stunts, tabloid romances, and box office comedy, but the details of her untimely death in 1967 gave birth to a string of coincidences that conspiracists have chewed on ever since. It wasn't just the brutality of her fatal car crash on a dark Louisiana highway. It was the rumors swirling around her ties to the occult, the cryptic warnings she'd allegedly received, and the curious timing of her demise. Mansfield's car, a Buick Electra, slammed into the back of a tractor trailer in the pre-dawn hours of June 29th, instantly killing her, her driver, and her boyfriend, attorney Sam Brody. The three of her children sleeping in the back seat, including future actress Mariska Hargitay, miraculously survived with minor injuries. But the headlines fixated on the gory details, with rumors, false but persistent, claiming Mansfield had been decapitated by the collision. The state police later clarified she suffered crushing head trauma, but the myth proved impossible to erase. The real intrigue began with stories about her association with Anton LaVey, founder of the Church of Satan. Mansfield's flirtation with the occult wasn't just tabloid fodder. She was photographed with LaVey, and he even dubbed her High Priestess of his San Francisco church. According to LaVey's daughter, Carla, Mansfield was a practicing Satanist who relished the media attention it brought her. But for conspiracy theorists, these connections weren't just for show, they were omens. In the weeks leading up to the crash, Mansfield had received threats and warnings, allegedly from LaVey himself, who reportedly told her that Brody, her boyfriend, was cursed. According to some accounts, LaVey had performed rituals to keep Brody away, fearing he would bring misfortune. The fact that Brody died beside her in the crash only intensified rumors that the accident was supernatural retribution. Further fueling the conspiracy were the peculiar details at the scene: the eerie fog that descended just before the crash, the truck's trailer hidden by it, and the streak of bad luck that had followed both Mansfield and Brody for months. Friends spoke of Mansfield's premonitions of doom, and some said she had become obsessed with her own mortality in her final days. In Hollywood, the story became a dark fable. Was Mansfield's end just a tragic random accident, or was it the chilling fulfillment of a curse, real or imagined, born from her brush with the occult? Decades later, the questions haven't faded. Jayne Mansfield's death stands as one of Tinseltown's most macabre and enduring coincidences, forever blurring the line between accident and something darker. James Dean's cursed Porsche. James Dean's name is forever linked with speed, rebellion, and the kind of Hollywood tragedy that feels almost preordained. But it's the bizarre coincidences following his death that have given rise to one of the film industry's most persistent conspiracy legends, the curse of Dean's Porsche 550 Spider, nicknamed Little Bastard. On September 30th, 1955, Dean was driving his brand new Porsche to a car race in Salinas, California. He was already a star, his image immortalized in Rebel Without a Cause, and was known for his love of fast cars. That afternoon, Dean's Porsche collided head-on with another car at an intersection near Cholame, killing him almost instantly. He was just 24. The car itself was nearly torn in half, its silvery frame twisted and ruined, a symbol of his reckless spirit and tragic fate. But Dean's story didn't end with his death. Almost immediately, strange accidents began to surround anyone who came into contact with the remains of Little Bastard. After the crash, famed car customizer George Barris purchased the wreck. As he moved it into his garage, it slipped and crushed a mechanic's legs. Parts of the car, engine, transmission, and tires were salvaged and sold to racers. The physician Troy McHenry, who installed Dean's engine into his own car, was killed during a race when the car spun out of control. Another driver, William Eschred, was badly injured when a tire from Dean's Porsche burst during a race. Even a truck driver who transported the shell reportedly died when the Porsche fell on him in transit. The curse grew in the telling. The Porsche was displayed for road safety awareness, and during one exhibit, the car fell from its stand and broke a teenager's hip. Eventually, the car vanished mysteriously while being transported, never to be seen again, cementing its mythic status as an object of bad luck and supernatural vengeance. Skeptics have pointed to coincidence and the dangers inherent in racing cars, but for those who followed the saga, the repeated tragedies were too frequent and specific to ignore. Was it all simply a string of bad luck, or did Little Bastard carry a curse that echoed the untamed energy and doomed charisma of James Dean himself? Hollywood never stops spinning stories, but with James Dean's Porsche, the facts and legends are hopelessly intertwined, a haunting case where coincidence, fate, and superstition keep the conspiracy alive, even decades after Dean's final fateful drive. The mysterious death of Thomas Ince on Hearst's yacht. In the early 1920s, Thomas Ince was one of Hollywood's most influential producers, a pioneer of the studio system, and a man who knew the secrets of everyone in town. Yet it wasn't his filmmaking that earned him eternal notoriety, but the bizarre and still unsolved circumstances of his sudden death aboard the yacht of newspaper tycoon William Randolph Hearst. The story that unfolded has become a bedrock of Golden Age Hollywood conspiracies, thanks to its cast of legends, conflicting accounts, and a web of coincidences that has never quite unraveled. On November 15, 1924, Hearst invited a glittering array of guests to his yacht, the Oneida, ostensibly to celebrate Ince's 44th birthday. Among the invited were silent film queen Marion Davies Hearst's mistress, Charlie Chaplin, columnist Luella Parsons, and other top Hollywood names. The party was filled with the era's elite, powerful, wealthy, and, on that night, bound together by fate. According to the official story, Thomas Ince fell ill with acute indigestion after eating rich food and drinking, then was removed from the yacht and died a day later from heart failure brought on by the attack. But even at the time, nobody believed it was that simple. Newspaper headlines blared about a death on the high seas, and the city buzzed with rumors. The cause of death was listed as heart failure, but no autopsy was performed, and the body was hastily cremated before a thorough investigation could be conducted. Here's where the coincidences and the conspiracy theories multiply. Some claimed Ince was accidentally shot by Hearst, who had mistaken him for Chaplin during a jealous rage over Davies. Others whispered that the real reason for Ince's death was a dispute over studio deals and secrets too dangerous to see the light of day. Luella Parsons, then a relatively minor columnist, was rumored to have been granted a lifetime contract by Hearst's syndicate in exchange for her silence. The fact that everyone on the yacht kept their stories straight and that several guests left town immediately afterwards only deepened suspicions. Even the timeline was suspicious. Some said Ince never made it off the yacht alive, while others swore they saw him being carried off, heavily bandaged. The official record contradicted witness statements, and key details, like a supposed gunshot wound, were never addressed. For years, the rumors would not die. Every major Hollywood biography, every retrospective of the era, circles back to that night on the Oneida. To this day, the true circumstances of Thomas Ince's death remain one of Hollywood's greatest unsolved mysteries. Was it a tragic accident, a cover-up by powerful men, or simply a string of unlikely coincidences? Whatever the answer, the case stands as a classic Golden Age Hollywood legend, one where truth, gossip, and chance are forever intertwined. Johnny Stompanato's killing by Cheryl Crane. Few Hollywood scandals have rippled as violently through the industry as the death of notorious gangster Johnny Stompanato, and the story only gets stranger the closer you look. Stompanato was Lana Turner's lover, a man whose presence alone attracted headlines, but it was the circumstances of his death in 1958 that generated a storm of conspiracies. A single night, a heated argument, a kitchen knife, and a series of coincidences so twisted that for decades, people have wondered what truly happened behind the glamorous facade of Turner's home. On April 4th, 1958, Lana Turner's Beverly Hills house became the epicenter of scandal. Stompanato, infamous for his ties to Los Angeles mob boss Mickey Cohen, was in the midst of a vicious argument with Turner. The fight was reportedly so loud and violent that Turner's teenage daughter, Cheryl Crane, feared for her mother's life. What happened next remains a source of debate. Cheryl grabbed a kitchen knife and, in a moment of panic, fatally stabbed Stompanato in the abdomen. The case went to a highly publicized inquest, where Crane, just 14, tearfully recounted her actions. The verdict: justifiable homicide, a desperate act of self-defense. But as the media frenzy exploded, so did the conspiracy theories. Critics and gossip columnists alike speculated that the truth had been carefully stage-managed by Turner's studio, MGM. Was it really Cheryl who wielded the knife, or was she protecting her mother from scandal and prison? Some pointed to reports of bruises on Lana Turner and inconsistencies in testimony. Others whispered that powerful Hollywood fixers, well-versed in cleaning up stars' messes, orchestrated the scene, coached Cheryl, and pressured authorities to look the other way. The rumors didn't stop there. Friends and insiders claimed Stompanato had been threatening Turner, perhaps even planning to blackmail or harm her. The mob's involvement, too, was never far from the story, with some speculating that Stompanato's violent end was payback for deals gone bad or connections too dangerous to reveal in court. The odd timing: Stompanato killed just as Turner's career was floundering with her public image on the line, only deepened the sense that fate, or something more sinister, was at work. Decades later, Cheryl Crane maintains she acted alone to save her mother. The police files are closed, but the suspicions, the whispers, and the uncanny timing of it all linger in Hollywood lore. Was it a clear case of self-defense, or the most elaborate cover-up the industry ever staged? In a city built on illusion, the line between truth and coincidence is always blurred. Carole Lombard's final flight. Carole Lombard was Hollywood's queen of screwball comedy, a luminous presence whose sharp wit matched her beauty. But her life, and the circumstances of her death, sparked one of old Hollywood's most chilling conspiracy-laced coincidences. On January 16, 1942, Lombard boarded a flight home to Los Angeles after selling war bonds in Indiana. The story of how she ended up on that doomed plane is where the legend and the suspicion truly begins. After a wildly successful war bond tour, Lombard, her mother, and MGM publicist Otto Winkler were supposed to return to California by train, her mother's preferred method, since she feared flying. But Lombard was desperate to get home to her husband, Clark Gable. To break the tie, the group supposedly flipped a coin at the airport. Fate chose the skies. Moments like this, the coin toss, the last-minute change of plans, always seem to cast a long shadow over tragedy, and for generations, people have wondered what would have happened if the coin had landed the other way. Flight 3 took off in fine weather, but crashed into a Nevada mountainside hours later, killing everyone aboard. The official explanation pointed to a navigation error, but details soon emerged that raised eyebrows. The plane was off course, a crucial warning beacon wasn't working, and local stories spoke of military restrictions on flight routes in the area. Adding to the mystery, Otto Winkler was said to have had a premonition about dying in a plane crash. Only months earlier, he'd tried to persuade Clark Gable not to fly, reminding him that planes are dangerous. Conspiracies multiplied. Some speculated that the crash was the result of wartime sabotage. Germany had just declared war on the United States, and rumors circulated about Nazi sympathizers targeting high-profile Americans. Others pointed to government secrecy around wartime transport, suggesting information was suppressed to avoid panic or scandal. In the weeks after, several strange coincidences emerged. Survivors from a previous leg of the journey narrowly avoided the disaster by changing flights at the last minute, while Lombard's mother reportedly had dreams warning her not to fly. The sheer tangle of chance, premonition, and high-profile loss kept the questions alive long after the official reports faded. Carole Lombard's death was mourned nationwide, but in Hollywood, it became a case study in fate's cruel hand and the lingering belief that sometimes the biggest tragedies are set in motion by the smallest, strangest decisions. Jean Harlow's haunted life and early death. Few stars of the Golden Age shone as brightly or flickered out as mysteriously as Jean Harlow, the platinum blonde whose every move captivated the public. While her screen persona was all laughs and seduction, Harlow's real life was riddled with an unsettling sequence of tragedies, strange coincidences, and whispers of a Hollywood curse that persists to this day. Harlow's meteoric rise in the early 1930s seemed almost predestined, but as her fame grew, so did the dark stories that seemed to follow her. The first major blow was the shocking suicide of her second husband, MGM producer Paul Byrne, found dead in their home just 2 months after their wedding. Official reports said it was suicide, but rumors raged. Was it a mob hit, a murder disguised as suicide, or the result of a secret that Byrne took to his grave? Harlow herself was dragged into the scandal, as were studio fixers desperate to protect her career. The so-called Harlow curse didn't end there. In 1933, her co-star and lover William Powell nearly died from a sudden illness. In 1937, Harlow herself became gravely ill while filming Saratoga. What began as a bout of flu quickly turned into kidney failure, a condition almost unheard of for a 26-year-old. On her deathbed, Harlow's mother, a Christian Scientist, refused medical intervention, convinced prayer would save her. The studio kept the severity of Harlow's condition a secret from both the public and even her closest friends. What makes Harlow's story so eerily coincidental is the repeated brushes with death and misfortune that seem to cluster around her. Her first husband, Charles McGrew, descended into alcoholism after their divorce. 2 of her closest friends died tragically young. Even MGM suffered repeated setbacks on Harlow's films. Saratoga had to be completed with a stand-in, and the production itself was plagued by mishaps. For decades, Hollywood insiders have pointed to the sheer accumulation of bad luck, early deaths, and failed romances that dogged anyone close to Harlow. Some saw these coincidences as evidence of a supernatural curse. Others saw them as the tragic fallout of the studio system's relentless demands and the pressures placed on women like Harlow. Regardless, her early death and the haunted aura surrounding her legacy still send a shiver down the spine of Hollywood historians. Jean Harlow became a legend, not just for her on-screen magic, but for the persistent sense that she was a star marked by fate, a young woman surrounded by omens whose brilliance was extinguished far too soon, leaving behind a legacy where coincidence and conspiracy will always be inseparable. Hollywood is built on dreams, but its history is shadowed by a tangle of chance and secrets no screenwriter could invent. These stories linger, not because we have answers, but because every coincidence hints at something stranger lurking in the margins. Was it fate, power, or just the cruel hand of chance? In a town where the spotlight hides as much as it reveals, maybe the biggest mystery is what we'll never know. Which story left you questioning the most? The next secret might be closer than you think.